Hi guys, you are in my wardrobe at the moment. So those of you who can see me on Spotify and on YouTube, actually this is the most private of my offices because this one is my home office inside my walk-in wardrobe, and that is where I hide out most of the time when Greg is using our second floor therapy office to see clients. So this is my inner sanctum. Welcome to a special edition of Comfort and Growth. I grew up in a family of very, very bright people. My mom and my dad were top boy and top girl in their schools, and they always instilled it, in us to maintain our brains. So I have got two younger brothers. I'm the eldest one, and all three of us, as you may know, we're in the gifted stream. I do think there's a big hereditary component there, but I also do think there are lots of things that you can do in order to promote better brain health. I want to talk about two main areas of self care for your brain. The first area is, I think, the one that is less spoken about, which is exercising your brain. How do you exercise your brain and push yourself to become smarter? What are some everyday habits you can have? And the other aspect is actually maintenance of your brain, like all those things that you hear about, like diet and sleep and all of that. How do you actually take care of the hardware, and how do you actually install the software that goes inside this thing? So I want to start off with exercising your brain. The first thing I want to talk about is curiosity. You have an infinite reservoir of curiosity when you are a kid. I have never heard of such a thing as a kid that's not curious. They are always asking, like, what if? Or why can't I do that? Or why? But a lot of times we sort of like uh, let this curiosity muscle atrophy as we grow older. So even like the word I just used, atrophy, it's not like a kind of like, I guess, common word to use. But I think what I noticed about smart people is that they're always looking for granular and very precise words. And they are curious about words. So they're always kind of like looking up words that they don't understand with curiosity. They're always researching things. They're always kind of asking themselves, what if? I probably have like, I don't know. You don't want to see my browser history, okay? It looks kind of deranged. I will literally be reading a lot, which I'm going to talk about reading in a moment. And every single time I'm reading something, I'm also kind of simultaneously like researching things. So curiosity is the first thing, but second thing, reading is just as important because reading stimulates curiosity. So reading is super important because reading actually exposes you to tons and tons of different ideas, and reading is one of the most efficient ways to become smart. I'm a little sad because like the younger generation, maybe that's a sweeping stereotype, but I don't think so, doesn't seem to read as much as my generation. Like when I was young, my mom used to literally like dump us in a bookstore, myself and my brother, and like we'll consume as many books as we can. And the more you read, the better you get at reading. Somebody once said that, I can't remember who it was, but like all the best brains in the world, so many of them have come up with their own books, yeah, and distilled lifetimes of lessons into something that you could read in like maybe a week, a few days, for example. And now I feel like reading is an opportunity to really suck up the wisdom of several, hundreds or thousands of people's lifetimes. Like you're sucking up the essence of their lifetime and their lessons learned, and you can install that like right into your brain. Like that movie Matrix. Somebody like Trinity or somebody needed to like understand like all the knowledge of like how to operate a helicopter or whatever it was, and then she was like and then like downloading it into her brain. That's kind of how I feel like when I am reading. It's like a kind of jack into like the wet matter of my brain. I get so excited about reading, and I have different times of the day I read. It is all inside my schedule. So, by the way, when I say reading, if you don't really like reading, I would still encourage that you try, but you can also try audiobooks, or you can try like, listening to educational podcasts, right? So in the morning, I tend to do a little bit of reading after I wake up, and I listen to an educational podcast as I'm doing my skincare routine because I might as well multitask. Um, always have audiobooks and podcasts for when I'm commuting, so that I can enrich myself. And also, last thing at night before I go to sleep, I do not want to have all that mental clutter in my brain. I do not want to go to bed kind of a random little fish floating around in my brain of like tomorrow's deadline or what I need to do, whatever. So before I go to bed, I always read some sort of work that is unrelated to my day job. So, for example, it can't be a book about psychology because I'll start thinking about my job and like how I can, use techniques or business books, and I'll be like full of ideas. But reading at night to me is about winding down. So I normally read fiction or science fiction at night, or dystopian sort of like science fiction. I also like reading in the bathtub. So I have a bathtub. I love it. I also like consuming podcasts in the sauna. I have a sauna. So I've talked about curiosity. I've talked about reading. The third thing is push yourself that extra 20%. So for instance, okay, I actually challenge my memory all the time through things like I memorize my credit card numbers. If you ask me my credit card number, expiry date, everything, I know it by heart. And that's not just because I shop a lot, okay? It's also because I like remembering things. So I know it's easy these days to like use one password or last password or things like that. But it's just really good practice to memorize things because you need to exercise your brain. So for instance, even with Google Maps, for example, it gives you the answer, everything. I'm going to try to kind of get an orientation in my mind. So I have a mental map of where I am, where I'm going, what is north, that kind of thing. Because the smarter technology becomes, the dumber humans become. And that is not a good trend. I do not want my smartphone to be really smart and my brain to atrophy and wither away. Okay, so keep on pushing yourself, and that means like doing cryptic crosswords, playing Sudoku, there's a game called Dual and Back. I'm going to put it inside the show notes. This is something that Tim Ferriss and a lot of neuroscientists have talked about as a cognitive training memory game. So playing those kind of games and just making yourself work a bit harder. All right, so I talked about like number 3, which was challenging yourself to push yourself the extra 20%. Now, the fourth thing is to give yourself certain sort of provocative prompts. So when you don't know something, a lot of people will say, I don't know, or they'll think, I don't know. So you can always prompt yourself by asking yourself, well, who's the smartest person I know? And who is the most equipped person to make this sort of decision? And if that person were in my shoes, what would this person do? I also love what Volker would always ask me in the Hoffman. Oftentimes, when I did the Hoffman process, which is this like 7-day personal growth retreat, my therapist Volker would always ask like really difficult questions like, what do you think is getting in the way or whatever? And I would tend to say like, I don't know, because like I just on that emotional level, I wasn't that smart. I wasn't very EQ smart when like about in my 20s or so. So Volker would always actually push me and say like, well, if you did know, what would it be? So I know you don't know, but if you did know, what would the answer be? And I thought that was a great prompt as well. I also think other prompts to kind of like force you to look at things different ways are like empathy prompts, for example. So like, for instance, if I have a difficult conversation to have with somebody, right? I might actually force myself to see the situation from the other party's point of view. If I were the other party, what would my motivations be? What would my needs be? How would I want to, how would I want to be treated? So this applies all the time when I'm emailing. So when I email or respond to anyone, I always put myself in the shoes of the recipient, and I think if I were them, what would I want? And how can I actually write an email that meets their needs the most in the best way? I'll give you an example. There was once, we had a whole bunch of Gen Zs on our team, and they were very good at technology. And they were very used as Gen Z style, sort of like registering themselves and buying things online or whatever. And then there was an instance where we had kind of more of a boomer or older client who wanted to register like 10 members of their team for a certain program, right? And the kind of Gen Z staff on our team was just kind of like, oh, here's the registration link. You can follow this link and do it here, because like their point of view was that it's going to be faster that way. But I was like, that's not empathic. They would much rather give you, this is like a big deal. This is like 10 people. You should just actually take the deal, say, thank you very much. Use it back. You don't need to do a thing. Like in that case, why I was called into the picture was because that client, after being told to self-register themselves or whatever, they just didn't get back. So that was maybe in the point of in our staff members' point of view efficient, but it definitely wasn't effective. So smarts is about doing what is effective, and I would even go one step further to do what is wise, right? So cognitive empathy, which is the ability to take on other people's perspectives, is so, so important. It is one of the most important rules of success in life. A lot of times, I believe my clients who've been working with me for 7 years, 8 years, 9 years, they've been working with me for so long because they feel, oh, Crystal gets me. And I do, I get them. Why? Because it is a skill that I have honed. Like if I were you, I would want this. I'm always thinking about how I can push myself the extra 20%, how I can under promise, over deliver. How do I want them to feel like after engaging with me? So that I park under cognitive empathy. Okay. And then fourthly, I want to talk about focus. Focus is very, very important, which means the ability to single task. Tim Ferriss once said, if you can single task for 2 hours a day, focusing on the highest leverage task that you have, you will be ahead of 99% of people. So, single tasking, focus, knowing your priorities is so important. And that's why, Rach and I came up with the I Am Well journal, which, we'll talk about another time. But I Am Well is all about getting your priorities right, starting with yourself and making sure you're doing what matters to you. Okay, so I've talked about a lot of things already in terms of exercising your brain, but I also want to talk about the other half of it, which is about brain self-care or brain maintenance. Okay, so the number one thing here is sleep. Your brain, when you're sleeping, it's like a washing machine cycle for your brain. Your brain basically gets refreshed, renewed, when you sleep, and it keeps it in good condition. Now, diet-wise, I don't believe in taking a lot of supplements. I take a few good supplements. I definitely believe in magnesium, in liposomal vitamin C, and collagen. I take some Chinese herbs sometimes from my TCM physician, Victoria, but I don't take a lot of supplements. I actually rely on a good diet to maintain my brain. So for example, I get my fish oils primarily through eating like good quality fish. I have never ever done drugs. I have not taken a single type of any single drug, from weed to psychedelics to anything, because I believe that it's not good for your brain. Yeah, and I do believe that if you've really got a good practice for training your brain, the last thing you want is for any sort of substance to interfere with that, and who knows about long-term effects. So I am good Singaporean over here, the goody two shoes, but really I feel so excited and so energized and so high on life that I don't think I will ever do drugs. I also don't believe in relying on coffee. I know a lot of people drink coffee, and Greg definitely drinks a lot of coffee. I do not drink coffee. It's one of the things that I picked up from my family. My mom never allowed us to drink coffee when we were kids, because again, mom was like, coffee is for, okay, I'm not saying this is true, but just my mom was like, coffee was for the weak, and we were not allowed to have coffee. So I never had coffee, and I never craved coffee. I do think that coffee alters you. and you don't know the real baseline of you and your energy levels and your mood and everything if you're always on coffee and so reliant on coffee. So I try not to rely on anything, including coffee. And last thing I'll say on maintenance is just really, really important for me, particularly to meditate. And I know a lot of you will think meditation, who's got time for it? Mindfulness and meditation can be incorporated and stacked into ordinary everyday routines that you're already doing. So, for example, in the shower, when you are showering, it's not like you can do anything else. You can't do emails or conference calls in your shower, right? But you can use your shower experience as a meditation. You can use all your senses to become alive to your experience. You can come home to your breathing. You can focus on the sensation of the water on your skin. You can, for instance, do that with having your first hot tea of the day. So just drinking tea itself can be a meditation. So any ordinary everyday activity you can do with mindfulness, and that means with your full presence, with your full attention, focusing on your senses. So mindful drinking, I'm going to drink now. Mindful drinking my tea means becoming aware and active noticing. I always say mindfulness, 2-word definition for mindfulness is active noticing. What can I notice about this moment? I can notice the warmth of the cup. I can notice the weight of the cup. Through the process of mindfulness, we notice more. We become awake, and then we are present to our life. But without mindfulness, we're just on autopilot all the time. Your hours, your minutes will just whiz by. Your life will be a blur, and then you won't even know where did it all go. So mindfulness is brain training because you're essentially kind of cleaning off the sensors of your brain, and you're allowing your brain to collect more data, more information, more sensory stimuli, and in that way you become alive and have a lot richer experience than what you previously thought was possible. So one last note on troubleshooting your brain. If there are any sort of intrusive thoughts that you're having, obsessive thoughts, compulsive thoughts, or limiting beliefs, this is all the realm of therapy. And I personally believe there are only 2 types of people in the world: people who realize that they need therapy and people who don't realize that they need therapy. Honestly, I believe therapy is good for everyone. It's kind of like coaching for your emotions, and it helps you become a less reactive person and a more responsive person. And really, therapy is like coaching, but the people who are therapists, who have a master's in counseling, who are clinical psychologists, have actually trained and had degrees, master's psychotherapy qualifications for years and years. Is a much higher standard than becoming a life coach, where anybody can become a life coach in a few months if they have enough hours. Okay, so that's been my public service announcement. I hope you've enjoyed self-care habits for your brain, and if you have any other smart ideas on how to be smart, let me know. Until next time, see you again on Comfort and Growth. Lots of love.